These were our film reels. We needed a little bit of personality here. Because we can't do much.
I like how it's right beside the toilets. It's very important.
You know, it's very convenient. We also have a film called Toilet in the festival this year. It's very much about the differences between Western toilets and non-Western toilets, Eastern toilets, fancy Japanese toilets. I met with Art Mickey, who is the head of the Japanese Canadian Association, who negotiated with the national government the Japanese redress. And he was the most sweet and like calm and like endearing kind of just man. He was very, very, you know, he wasn't somebody who was kicking and screaming or anything like that. But the organization overall, like the Asian Heritage Month organizations who were trying to create awareness about Asian Canadian history, just felt like it wasn't of interest to our new generations of people, like young Asian Canadians who were just like, oh, you know, Japanese redress, Japanese internment, you know, Chinese head tax. Like, it's not. It's so. I think that's a sign of our cultures, like our generation, who just see everything so immediately, consume everything so immediately, and do really think that art is like entertainment and really, like, I mean, you can be overly, like, yes, I believe in celebration and having fun and laughing and seeing, like, funny, wacky adventure movies, and I believe in that building community, but the danger of that is to, like, remove, like, or deny, like, really, like, the really complex history of that. Like, it's just like erasing it and just being like, oh, Japanese movies, oh, that's our Japanese culture, right? It's like, well, no, we have a very intense Japanese Canadian history. Like, so Jeff Chiba Stearns talks about that, but he's actually a good one who does it in One Big Happy Family. It's this really lighthearted documentary, actually, where he interviews, like it's like 95% of Japanese in Canada interracially marry, which is outrageous. Like not outrageous, but like everybody's like, oh my god, why is it that all these Japanese people who are in Canada are interracially married? And so he kind of goes on this kind of trying to discover why that happened. And I don't know, I think there was a lot of denial, a lot of sort of like, well, you know, just because we're Canadian, we don't see race. You know, it was like, it's such an interesting piece. Like, it's an interview with small children and like teenagers and like his parents and stuff like that, who are just like, oh, you know, we never really thought about our racial differences. We just married who we loved, and that's a beautiful concept. But then Jeff, on the top of that, adds like his own visit to the Japanese internment camps, right, and looks at like the historical reasoning. And so I think it's a complicated piece that's delivered in a fun and like digestible way that people can kind of take it at face value and enjoy watching the documentary, learn a little bit of something, and you can read into it as far as you want. So that's kind of a nice piece that does that. But I think most of the time, a lot of people don't even want to go there. Like, they don't want to go there. It's like, it's either too sore or not of interest. Like, you know, it's sort of like a weird thing. Like with the, I don't know, anyways. So, yeah, so it's like, I don't know, I think people don't want to necessarily be overly political because they don't want to be seen as, I don't know, like...
Is it unpopular with audiences in general?
To be political?
Yeah, particularly with Canadian audiences.
With Canadian,
because
not necessarily, like, I mean, it's different because our audiences are so, like, we have audiences here who are very political, and then we have some other audiences who don't want any political affiliation and they just want to see something fun. And in particular, we were just talking about the Burmese refugees documentary and drama that involves the Burmese refugees acting out their own stories. We thought maybe we'll contact a women's association who, I'm not going to name who, but sort of a women's association that is for new immigrants. And And not that they said anything bad about it, but when we called them to invite them to see if they'd be interested in seeing this documentary and finding out more about them, they were sort of like, well, it'd be really great if we could take our members out for a night where they can just like let all that go and just have some fun. And we were like, oh, okay, well then don't give them tickets to that one because that was like a heartbreaker. And so it's all like about whether or not you're ready enough to deal with those issues. I feel like second generations can be a little bit more ready to deal with those things, but in some ways are too far removed that aren't really that connected to it. So
what are some of the challenges when you decide to acquire a film for the festival and then market it in such a, like, I guess, what are the criteria? Is there a criteria?
Is there a criteria? Well, earlier we were talking about the programming and having that sort of that diversity within the overall programming, you know, to have our opening night kind of kung fu comedy film and then to have our documentaries about interracial marriage, Japanese internment, Chinese head tax, and the Burmese refugees, where you're just like, whoa, how do you do that and how do you do this, right? The challenges are that maybe at the beginning I'm kind of in denial. Like for me, it's about the artistic merit and the relevance and the quality of the work, like the merit of what the work is trying to achieve and whether or not that is meaningful. Definitely is something that's definitely a part of my own personal mandate. And I believe is a part of relations as well, is that we have meaningful work that is about society and that forwards a dialogue. And then the challenges is how do we then encourage, like how do we market it is a whole other bundle of worms that I'm sort of like, Luann, and she's like, no, I don't think they're coming. And I'm like, well, it's okay, because as long as there's a small group of people who are interested in it, you know, and even if it's only a very small group, I think it will have more impact than, you know, it's like, how do you weigh it? It's not just box office, it's not ticket sales, that's not what we're about. We're a not-for-profit charitable organization that's funded by the arts councils that really ultimately has a social and obligation to our communities that we represent. So there's that. So I think that there's enough people who really know that that's what we're about that they'll come, right? And I think there's so much other access. Like I think people in some ways only find it here because there's so much stuff you can find on, like we talked about, the internet and television and broadcast, like, you know, any given movie store where you can now you can access Hong Kong films and you can access all the popular Asian films. You can, even the art house films you can get, but there are certain films that you can't get and that you won't be able to talk about in your home by yourself. Like that you need to have the filmmaker here and you need to actually have like a conversation about it. So I don't know. So like I think that's definitely part of the criteria, is definitely wanting to provide something that maybe people weren't so familiar with and didn't really realize was even an issue.